The moment the word psycho left her lips, the studio exploded. Lights blazed, reporters gasped. One cameraman even dropped his headset. Live, unfiltered, and streaming to over 32 million viewers worldwide, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stared down Donald Trump from across the glowing glass desk. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't blink. "You've played with people's lives for power," she snapped. "You're reckless. You're a psycho." Trump didn't move. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even smug. It was a cold, surgical smile. The kind that said he'd been waiting for this moment. That he wanted her to go too far. And then, calmly, he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a folded document. "You really shouldn't have said that, Jasmine." The room fell into a terrifying silence. Cameras zoomed in. Even Jasmine's co-host turned pale. Trump flattened the document on the table, and then said 6 words that chilled the world. Just moments earlier, Jasmine had been glowing. Wearing her signature cobalt blue blazer, her hair tight and perfect, she'd walked into the studio with her usual mix of passion and purpose. The producers were ecstatic. This was her biggest debate yet. She was ready to take Trump down, not just for politics, but for the lives he'd hurt. She remembered the single mother in Dallas who lost her home after policy cuts, the immigrant child deported while in treatment. Jasmine carried names, not just causes, so when the debate turned personal, she didn't hesitate. But now, Trump had that file. He slowly turned it toward the cameras, still not opening it, but letting the weight of it sit there like a loaded gun. "5 years ago," he said, "someone very close to you made a deal. A dirty one. You covered it up, but I never forget." Jasmine's face froze. Her fingers clenched under the desk, out of frame. "Not this, not that." She whispered, "That's a lie." Trump leaned forward. "Then why does your signature appear on page 4? Jasmine's mind was racing. He can't have it. He can't possibly have it. That document was sealed years ago, hidden during the most painful chapter of her life. Back when her brother, Marcus, had fallen into a mess he never should have touched, caught between survival, gang ties, and a crooked backdoor legal deal. Jasmine had fought to keep him out of jail. She'd begged a family friend in the DA's office to bury the plea record. Not for power, not for herself, for family. She had signed a confidentiality clause, silent shame to protect someone she loved. Now Trump was peeling that wound open, live. He tapped the folder again. "We all make mistakes," he said. "But when you call me a psycho, maybe you should explain why your own brother was trafficked across state lines with a stolen weapon in the trunk." Gasps. Cameras zoomed. A producer off stage swore under his breath. Jasmine stared down at the table. Suddenly, she wasn't the bold congresswoman anymore. She was a terrified sister, watching the world crack open under her feet. She didn't blink. She couldn't. The fire in Jasmine's voice had vanished, swallowed whole by the weight of what Trump had just revealed. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted her back. He'd simply laid a file on the desk and said, "Let's show the world who you really are." Reporters froze. The director whispered frantically into his headset, "Don't cut. Stay live." Jasmine stared at the folder like it was a ghost from a life she buried. Not a political scandal. Not a mistake she could spin. No. This was personal. It had nothing to do with campaigns or votes. It had to do with Marcus, her baby brother. Trump tapped the file again, like a countdown. "Page 4, Congresswoman. Read it out loud." She didn't move, because she knew what page 4 was. A deal. Her signature. A sacrifice she made when no one else would help her family. She had saved a life, but in doing so, she had written away her future. And now Trump had it. Live. The studio couldn't hear her heart pounding, but Jasmine could. That sound, her heartbeat thudding against her ribs, was the same sound she heard 6 years ago in a cold police station, as she watched Marcus, barely 19, sit cuffed and trembling. He wasn't a criminal. He was just scared, caught holding a friend's stolen gun during a traffic stop. The system didn't care. The prosecutor said 10 years. Jasmine had begged, pleaded. She wasn't a congresswoman back then, just a young attorney with no power but one friend in the DA's office. One friend who said, "There's one way, quiet plea, sealed file, but you'll have to sign too." She had, to protect Marcus, to make sure he had a future. Now here she was, with Trump holding that file like a loaded weapon. "You didn't disclose this when you ran for office, did you?" he asked, his voice flat. "Because you knew." The silence was louder than shouting. Cameras captured everything. Jasmine swallowed. She could either defend the truth or let the shame define her. Trump leaned forward. His tone shifted. Not cruel, not smug, almost human. "I read the whole file. You did it to save your brother. I respect that." Jasmine blinked. What? Was this a setup? A trap? Trump continued, eyes locked on hers. "You sacrificed your political future to protect family. That's powerful. That's raw. I admire that strength." The audience was stunned. A few reporters murmured. The tension twisted into confusion. But then, his voice dropped, sharp again. "But lying to the American people about it? That's weakness." He turned to the cameras. "What else has she hidden?" Gasps. Phones came out. Hashtags were already trending. Jasmine's mind spiraled. He had cornered her emotionally, praised her heart, only to weaponize it. A clever trap. Now it wasn't just about the file. It was about trust, legacy, truth. Tears threatened her eyes, not from guilt, but helplessness. She wanted to scream, "I did what I had to." But Trump had already shifted the spotlight, and the world was waiting for her response. As Trump's words echoed, "What else has she hidden?" Jasmine's memory fractured. She wasn't in the studio anymore. She was back in that tiny courtroom, watching her baby brother in chains, his wrists bruised, his head bowed, her mom crying in the corner. The judge had called Marcus a repeat risk. The media painted him as just another statistic. But Jasmine knew who he really was, the same boy who used to sneak Pop-Tarts into her backpack when she skipped breakfast for school. That courtroom was where she'd decided, no more begging, no more shame. I'll make it to Congress. I'll change the laws, so no other family has to go through this. But she hadn't told the world how she started. Because if she had, they wouldn't have seen a fighter. They'd have seen a cover-up. Her voice returned to the studio, shaky, but real. "My past doesn't define my integrity." Trump folded his arms. "Then why did you hide it from your voters?" The studio erupted again. Jasmine knew she had seconds to answer. Jasmine didn't look at Trump when she answered. She looked at the camera, at the millions watching. "You want to know why I hid it?" she said, her voice raw. "Because women like me, black women, don't get second chances in politics. We don't get to make mistakes and be forgiven. We're expected to be perfect from birth." Reporters paused. Even Trump raised an eyebrow. "I protected my brother," she said, "and I would do it again. But I kept it quiet, because I knew that if I told the truth, not a scandal, but a story of love, people like you would twist it into shame." A single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. "Marcus is alive today, working, free, helping others now. And if that makes me unfit to lead, then maybe we need to ask what kind of leaders we really want." Silence. Even producers backstage stopped typing. It was the most human moment of the entire debate. But before the nation could absorb it, Trump whispered something under his breath. The moderator leaned in. Mr. Trump, did you just say checkmate? Trump sat back, eyes cold. You speak well, Jasmine, but emotion isn't truth. He reached into his folder again. This time it wasn't a document. It was a flash drive. He held it up like a trophy. Let's show the country what happened the night Marcus got arrested. Not the version you've told, the real one. Jasmine's spine stiffened. No, no, please no. The footage had been sealed. Only the family had seen it, even then, just once. It showed Marcus terrified, stumbling through traffic with a bleeding arm. He wasn't running from a crime. He was running from a beating. The gun hadn't been his. It had been tossed into his car without his knowledge. But the camera only caught the chaos, not the context. If Trump played it now, out of context, the world would see something very different. Jasmine's voice caught in her throat. The moderator turned toward Trump. Are you saying you intend to air the footage now, live? Trump gave a small, wicked smile. The people deserve transparency. If you air that footage, Jasmine said slowly, you're not just attacking me. You're reopening trauma. You're hurting a man who rebuilt his life from nothing. Trump didn't blink. He slid the flash drive toward the control desk. Transparency isn't an attack, it's clarity. The producers huddled. One whispered, do we play it? What's legal? Jasmine stood up. Her voice was steady now. Not loud, just honest. Play it. If that's what you need to do, go ahead. Gasps rippled across the studio. She locked eyes with the camera. Because if this is the price of telling the truth, then let the whole world watch. She didn't speak for herself anymore. She spoke for every black family who had ever been silenced. For every kid like Marcus, who had been judged before they had been heard. A long pause. Trump tapped his pen. Roll it, he said. The screen lit up behind them. The footage began, and the world leaned in. The footage flickered. Marcus stumbled into frame, bleeding, disoriented, waving for help. Sirens howled, tires screeched, and then, the part no one had ever seen publicly, the police body cam. An officer stepped out yelling, "Hands up!" Marcus raised his hands. He didn't run. But then, faintly in the background, a second voice said, "Just grab him. He fits the profile." The officer turned his mic off. But the backup cam, the one on the cruiser's dash, kept rolling, and it caught everything. Marcus being slammed onto the hood. No explanation, no Miranda rights, just fear. The studio was silent. Even Trump leaned in. Then, a quiet gasp. Jasmine recognized the officer in the background. It wasn't just any cop. It was the same officer currently under federal investigation for another racial profiling case, one that had recently gone viral. The audience watching from home exploded. Jasmine whispered, "You just exposed the wrong person." Trump looked confused. "Wait, who is that?" The moderator, a respected journalist named David Linwood, looked pale. He paused the footage, took a breath, and said something no one expected. "I recognize that officer. I used to work with him. I was embedded with local precincts for a documentary years ago. That man was dirty then. I knew it. I filmed things I couldn't air." Trump stared at him. Jasmine slowly sat down, stunned. David continued, "We always thought that video would vanish. I never thought it would resurface, let alone here tonight." He turned to the producers. "If what I remember is correct, there's more, much more." Jasmine's hands trembled, not from fear, from something she hadn't felt all night. Hope. For the first time, it wasn't about her past. It was about the system, and the cracks that video had just exposed. Trump leaned back, jaw tight. His plan had backfired, live and in front of the world. But Jasmine didn't celebrate. She looked into the camera and said, "This was never about destroying anyone. It was about telling the truth, even when it hurts. A sharp chime echoed through the studio's control room. The producer whispered into his mic, then looked up, stunned. "We've got a call." From Marcus Crockett. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Her baby brother, who had never spoken to the press, who hated the spotlight, was calling in live, in the middle of the most brutal moment of her public life. She whispered, "Put him through." The screen behind them shifted, and there he was, wearing a warehouse work vest, standing outside during his break, eyes glassy and voice trembling. "I told you not to protect me anymore, Jas," Marcus said softly. "You already did enough. You saved my life." Reporters covered their mouths. Marcus continued, "I made mistakes. I ran with the wrong people. But that night, that officer nearly killed me. And my sister. She never used it to climb. She just wanted me to survive." Trump shifted uncomfortably. The crowd felt it. Marcus looked straight into the camera. "So if you're going to judge someone, judge me, not her." Jasmine turned away, her tears no longer silent. Marcus held up a flash drive of his own. The screen froze. "I didn't want to do this," he said. "But when I saw that officer's face again tonight, I knew I had to." He explained. 2 months ago, Marcus had been contacted by a civil rights organization, building a case against that same officer. They'd recovered old dash cam footage from other incidents, including Marcus's arrest. The real uncut video. Not just the panic, not just the aftermath, but the full conversation between the arresting officers before Marcus ever stepped out of the car. And what it revealed? That Marcus was targeted, not for what he did, but for who he was, where he lived, the color of his skin. "I told the lawyers not to go public unless something like this happened again," Marcus said. He looked at Jasmine, eyes shining. "It happened again. To you." Gasps rippled through the room. Jasmine covered her mouth. And Trump? He looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him. The door slammed open. A producer ran in holding a tablet, eyes wide. "We've got a situation," he whispered to the moderator. "A document just leaked." The moderator paled, then turned toward the camera. "We interrupt this broadcast with breaking news. A sealed deposition from a former Trump campaign aide has just surfaced, implicating the former president in a cover-up involving that same officer." The studio went silent. Jasmine froze. Trump's jaw twitched. The moderator read, "In the sworn statement, the aide claims that Trump's team once suppressed evidence of racial misconduct by this officer during the 22-20 cycle, calling him useful for local intimidation." Cameras snapped. Phones rang. Viewers online went ballistic. Trump tried to speak, but the mic was cut, temporarily muted by producers trying to control the chaos. Jasmine looked across the table. For the first time all night, Trump was the one with nothing to say, and Jasmine? She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She whispered one word. "Finally." The screen behind them flickered, and then it played. Marcus sat in his car, parked, waiting for a friend. The dashboard cam recorded every second. A police cruiser pulled in front, another behind. The officer from earlier stepped out, the one now under federal investigation, and said calmly into his radio, "He fits the profile. Call backup. We'll search him for probable cause." Then, "Don't worry. His kind never fights back." Jasmine covered her mouth. The world watched as Marcus stepped out, unarmed, hands raised, only to be thrown down, kneed in the back, and cuffed. No warning, no explanation. One of the officers whispered to the other, "Record buttons off?" "Yeah, this one disappears just like the last." But it didn't disappear. Marcus had unknowingly saved the footage from a smart dash camera loaned to him by a friend. one with cloud sync. That cloud had just rained truth on live TV. The audience watching wasn't shocked anymore. They were angry. Trump sat frozen. And Jasmine? She stood tall. The cameras turned to Jasmine. Her hands shook, not from fear, but release. A years-long burden had just cracked open, and light was pouring in. She stepped toward the center of the stage. No notes, no prep, just truth. "I called you a psycho tonight," she said, turning toward Trump, "because I was tired of the lies, the bullying, the manipulation. But I was wrong to use that word." The room stirred. Even Trump looked up. "Because psychopaths don't feel. But you knew exactly what you were doing. You tried to destroy my life with my own pain, and you weaponized my love for my brother to silence me." She turned back to the camera. But truth doesn't die just because someone's louder. And if this moment has shown us anything, it's that every single person watching deserves leaders who are willing to tell the truth, even if it costs them everything. Silence. Then slowly, applause from the crew, the audience, even one of the moderators. Jasmine breathed deeply for the first time in hours. But as the broadcast prepared to end, the final shock arrived. Just as the cameras were fading out, a producer rushed over with a single sheet of paper. "You should read this. It just came in." It was a handwritten letter from a woman in Georgia. She was watching live with her 15-year-old son, a boy who, until today, believed that people like him would never be protected, never be heard. "Tonight, you didn't just speak for your brother," the letter read. "You spoke for mine. For every young black man this country sees as a threat instead of a child. And for every sister who carries the weight of both truth and silence." Jasmine's voice cracked as she read it aloud. Tears rolled freely now, not just from her, but from the crew, the staff, even a few reporters. And when the show ended, the nation didn't talk about Jasmine Crockett's meltdown. They talked about Jasmine Crockett's courage, because she didn't just survive the attack. She turned it into a moment that would outlive the noise. If this story moved you, if it made you think, made you cry, or reminded you why truth matters, please tap like to help it reach more people. Subscribe so you don't miss stories that make you feel something real. And tell us in the comments, who in your life would you fight for the way Jasmine fought for her brother? Your voice matters. Your story matters. And we're here to tell it.